Harbor, December 7th, 1941, many Americans became suspicious and afraid of all Japanese people, calling them Japs and other derogatory names. In our scene today, we hope our guests will not be offended by the use of these types of slurs, which are used only in the interest of historical accuracy. Over 90% of Japanese immigrants to the U.S. settled in California, where labor and farm competition fed into general anti-Japanese sentiment. From 1931 through 1941, the FBI compiled the Custodial Detention Index on citizens, enemy aliens, and foreign nationals, citing national security. In 1940, the Alien Registration Act was passed.
On February 19, 1942, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, whereby all people of Japanese ancestry were to be excluded from the entire Pacific coastal area, including California, Oregon, Washington, and Arizona. But Raymond C. R.C. Hoyles of the Santa Ana Register wrote many editorials objecting to Japanese internment.
R.C., you're at it again. It's hard to believe that we're related, let alone that you're my younger brother.
What is it this time, Frank?
What is it this time, Frank? Your latest editorial about Jap internment.
Few, if any, people ever believed that the internment of the Japanese was constitutional. It was the result of emotion and fright rather than being in harmony with the Constitution and the inherent right that belongs to all citizens.
You're the only one in the entire country printing such things.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of that.
Well, you won't be so proud when we lose our subscribers and our advertising.
Is that what you're worried about?
Of course, without them we can't stay in business.
Frank, have you actually thought about what I'm saying?
No. And frankly, I don't care. I'm co-editor of this newspaper, and I want it to stop.
I'm talking about government internment of Japanese people, Frank. I'm talking about in America, Frank. I'm talking about how wrong it is.
We're at war with Japan. They bombed Pearl Harbor last year, remember? And besides, we're only gathering up the Japs to prevent spying.
Spying? Convicting people of disloyalty to our country without having specific evidence against them is too close to the kind of government we are fighting, Frank.
Stop quoting your editorials to me, R.C. Nobody cares about these filthy Japs. Look what happened in Hawaii.
The Ni Hao incident again.
2 native-born Japanese and 1 native-born Hawaiian Jap assisted 1 Jap soldier that bombed Pearl Harbor.
I'm calling for an end to the concentration camps.
They used violence, R.C., against Americans. They're Jap traitors.
The pilot is dead now, Frank, and the 2 who helped him are in jail. The question we need to consider is whether or not this internment, in the long run, will really help us win the war.
You keep printing these editorials. We're going to lose this newspaper. Then where will you be?
Where will I be if I don't speak out against injustice? A newspaper that is afraid of losing subscribers because of principles is of no use to itself or anyone else. It may make money, but its publisher loses his self-respect, his own soul.
Another one of your editorials.
Too many newspapers are afraid of offending somebody and losing $1 by taking an unpopular position. The result is they cease to develop, cease to be any use in the community.
Great speech. But what does that have to do with our newspaper?
A newspaper should try to promote goodwill, peace, and prosperity.
No, a newspaper should make money.
Which is why we ran these articles. January 11th, 1940. 200 members of the Japanese American League gathered at Santa Ana City Hall to publicly pledge their allegiance to the U.S. February 6th, 4 RNs of Japanese descent fired at Orange County Hospital. March 27th, Exclusion Orders 59, 60, 61 state that all Japanese, citizens or not, will be moved out of Orange County. May 11th to 12th, Japanese are registered in Huntington Beach and Anaheim. And today, printed in the Register, our newspaper, Frank, what does that headline say?
May 15th, 1942, 750 Japanese were interned and sent to Poston Relocation Center in Arizona.
If I were Japanese, I'd feel betrayed.
Well, you're not Japanese, and I want you to stop printing these stories that sympathize with the Japs.
I'm running this paper, and I'll say what is to be printed in it as long as I'm running it. And if these stories are true, and I think that they are, they're going to run whether you like it or not.
Many Japanese Americans have served in the American military. Many have also served in this very war, Mr. Hoyles.
Frank, do you know Kazuo Masuda?
Never heard of him.
He grew up here in Santa Ana. He's part of the 442nd Infantry of the U.S. Army.
Never heard of that either.
Composed entirely of Americans of Japanese ancestry. We are born in the United States. We are citizens of the United States. Very few of us have ever been to Japan, and many of us do not know how to speak Chinese, or Japanese.
What is this world coming to? Japs in our army.
Organizations like the Japanese American Citizen League lobbied the government. The Assistant Secretary of War, John J. McCloy, and the General Staff of the Army made the decision. Native-born Japanese Americans volunteer to serve in a segregated unit, and we do not like to be called Jap.
What is this world coming to?
I think it's a great idea. Japanese Americans should be allowed to defend their country.
Their country.
I am a loyal American, and I am proud to serve my country.
Tell my brother what you told me.
On December 7th, my father was imprisoned in the Orange County Jail by the sheriff. The reason for his arrest is unknown.
Recognize the date, Frank? The same day Pearl Harbor was bombed. Go on.
10 days later, after being questioned by FBI agents, he was transferred to Fort Missoula, Montana, where he is interned.
Do you think your father was spying?
I cannot believe my father has done any act of disloyalty towards the United States. He has been a resident of this country for over 40 years, and in all of the time I have ever lived with him, he has never uttered a single word against the United States. He considered this nation as his country. He has not, unlike many others have done, sent any of his children for any of their education to Japan. He wanted his children to be Americans.
This is what I'm writing about, Frank. If we cannot have faith in humanity and regard people as innocent until they are proven guilty, then we are on the road to losing our democracy.
What R.C. Hoyles did was to speak out against an injustice when it had overwhelming public support. It later became fashionable to defend Japanese Americans, but Hoyles spoke out when it counted most, while injustice was occurring.
44 years later, in 1988, Presidential Ronald Reagan signed legislation that apologized for the internment on behalf of the U.S. government. The government eventually dispersed more than $1.6 billion in reparations to Japanese Americans who had been interned and their heirs. R.C. Hoyles is buried at this location in Fairhaven. Staff Sergeant Kazuo Masuda was killed in action on August 27, 1944, and is buried in Westminster, California. Please follow me.